I'm Laura Blumenthal on the Berkshire Heroes podcast, and joining me today is Matt Whitelock, otherwise known as the Drama Guru. Welcome, Matt.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Now, we know each other because you used to be my drama coach a number of years ago now when you used to run Berserk Productions. You sold that about 4 years ago, and now you're freelance as the Drama Guru, directing, running workshops. And until quite recently, you stepped down from being chair of the board of the Pride of Reading Awards, which is incredible. And I want to start by asking you, what drew you to a life dedicated to the performing arts and bringing out the best in people, especially the young?
Oh, good question. My journey into performing arts it's, as you probably remember, it's never really been about performance for performance sake. It's always been about the people, many who are still friends now, as you've come on to talk to me today. It's about potential. It's about creating spaces where young people feel brave enough to take risks, find their voice, and connect with each other and themselves. When I was at school, it saved me from myself. Drama isn't just an extracurricular activity for me, it's a rehearsal for life. And I've been dedicating my work to helping young people and adults discover what they're capable of when they step into the story. My journey has been about using theatre not just as an escape from life, but as a way back into it. It's about bringing people together, building confidence, and, helping them realise that they're capable of more than they think.
Of course. And we hear a lot, especially post COVID, about young people really struggling with anxiety, feeling quite lost, being quite withdrawn. You've worked with young people for decades. Is this what you're seeing? And how is drama helping those young people get the confidence and skills to thrive?
Oh, another great question, Laura. Listen, yeah, I've been quite lucky. I've worked in state education, private education, home education, specialist education. So I've really seen different styles and forms of education over the years. And it's true, I do see a lot of young people struggling with anxiety, self-doubt, and that sense of being a bit lost, especially post lockdown, and adults too. With my work at Holybrook School, which I've been at for about 22 years, that's a specialist school in Southcote. I know firsthand what drama can do for all the children. But what I also see is that young people want to connect. They want to be seen and heard. They're not always just they're not always just given the space or the tools to do it. That's why I see drama is powerful. The improvisation, the public speaking, the storytelling. It gives them a way to step out of their heads and into the moment. It builds, I feel, courage. It helps them trust their instincts, think on their feet, and communication. With heart, and that's the best part. Is they don't even realise they're doing it. They're having fun whilst they're learning these skills.
I remember life when you're 13, 14, it can be quite dull. It's very regimented, quite predictable. And going to drama classes where there's spontaneity and improvisation and you can use your imagination and you have to think on your feet and things are a bit random. It's just the most exciting thing in the world. And it does just prepare you for those moments in life when you're older, when you have to give a presentation and think on your feet and use humor and adapt to different status. It's just all encompassing. I've certainly appreciated it throughout my career. And I wondered if there was a particular memorable moment or someone that you really helped get out of their shell, perhaps a parent who wrote to you, who recognized that, if there's anything that really sticks in your mind.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm very humbled. I often get messages from people I taught 20 years ago just saying, I still remember what you've done, I still use it now. And for me, that sort of means everything. Like you've just said there. And it's beautiful to sort of get those messages. And like you said, what I'm coaching is totally the opposite to what they're normally allowed to do in school. Make a lot of noise, get excited, run around, think on their feet, use their first thought, everything that most young people can't get to do because they're hearing phrases like, don't speak to me like that. Who do you think you're looking at? Da, da, da. Wipe that smile off your face. So they're all being told to hold all these things in whilst we're hopefully allowing them to let it all out. But, back to your question, for me, this, Laura, they're all stars to me, and that's honest. Every single one of them, especially the young people who've been told directly or indirectly that they don't fit, they're too much or they're not enough. A lot of children I work with have social, emotional, or mental health challenges, and yet when they step into the world of drama, when they prepare for, I don't know, something like a Lambda exam, for example, I can see something shift, and a lot of these children wouldn't normally get that opportunity to do this sort of coaching. A lot of the societies that are now and companies that are now in Reading, some offers of bursaries, obviously, and some have free courses available, but generally, it's not something that's allowed. So these children sort of find their voice, they find pride. I never forget, you asked me about if there's one child. There's one boy who sort of barely spoke when I first met him. No eye contact, didn't have any focus, trust was difficult. But week by week, through the story, through his character work, through the movement, through using his voice and looking at oracy work, which is another a big part of what I do, you watched him grow. And, he passed his Lambda exam and, he passed it with distinction. But honestly, the real achievement, I think, wasn't the certificate. It was more the moment his mum told me she'd never seen him stand so tall, that he smiled all day at home. And for me, that's the magic of this work. It's not about creating performers. It's about creating belief, giving them back to themselves. I often say to children I coach is, I'm not coaching. I'm not teaching you anything you don't know. You know this deep down. You know this is how it needs to be. And, that stood me in good stead, I suppose, over all these years.
I remember those Lambda exams of learning those monologues, some of them dramatic, some of them humorous, and you coaching us, doing something as an individual rather than as a play where you're as an ensemble. Everything is on you. And so you coaching to really enable me to take control of the room, to be aware of my body, my presence, my breath work, my pacing of my voice, all these things which young people don't really think about, but it's actually just being aware of that, which just gets them in good stead and gives confidence for future life as well. So I remember that to this day. And I wanted to ask you about performing arts locally. So how is the performing arts scene locally doing? Are people going to performances? Everything seems so much more expensive now, putting on a production. How are companies adapting? And with Shinfield Studios opening not that long ago, has that given a new lease of life for local artists and technicians?
Well, definitely, yeah. Listen, when I started out 30 years ago, there was 3 or 4 companies, maybe I could think off the top of my head, that were providing performing arts coaching or drama, etc. And I feel Reading now is actually saturated with cultural and heritage pleasures, and that's no bad thing. They say competition's a healthy thing, so it's actually something I'm really proud of. Having run Berserk for so many years and being involved in so many creative projects locally, I've seen performing arts scene grow massively, and there's a real energy and talent in Reading. But I do think it's still a challenge. There are so many brilliant providers, companies, and so forth, and we've all worked so hard to bring people together. But sometimes I feel, ironically, that's sometimes made things feel a little bit more isolated. It's a shame, because at the heart of performing arts is a community and shared experience. With the cost of living, as you said, rising and everything getting more expensive, it's definitely forced companies to adapt, whether that's programming smaller shows, working in unusual spaces, or collaborating in different ways. And you mentioned Shinfield Studios. That's a really exciting thing. It's really exciting development for this town. I think technicians, creatives, so much work for artists. It's early days, but anything that invests in the creative economy locally is a positive thing. But at the heart of it all for me has always been the same: creating spaces for people to come together, to tell stories, to belong. And I hope the spirit of collaborating grows stronger, because, how could I put it? Because when the arts work together, everyone wins. And I don't want to see that isolation. I worked so hard in my early years to bring these companies to work together. And where they've all grown, I'm just hoping they still remember that, because I still feel sometimes it's a battle to bring these people together because they're worried about sharing their audiences or their children. I had a thing at Berserk that any child wanted to do something somewhere else, I actively encouraged it. And in the last piece, I sort of luckily got guest directing for Berserk again, the National Theatre Connections piece. It was great to have people from Reading Rep Youth Theatre, from lots of local schools, all coming together, and these young people working on a project, and was just amazing. And it did pull all these different things together, people that are normally focused on their own work and what I sometimes feel isn't the bigger picture. Does that answer your question okay?
Absolutely. No, it sounds as if there's a lot of support among the creators locally, which is only a good thing. I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you about the Pride of Reading Awards, because of course you won an award back in 2004. And I wanted to ask you what you won that for, how it felt when you won, and also your involvement in it for such a long time. What drew you to that?
Wow, crumbs. Like you say, the Pride of Reading's Awards has definitely grown over the years. So when I won, we was at I think it was the Ramada Hotel back then, very small awards. Chris Tarrant was still hosting, and I won the Cultural Contribution Award back in the day, which I was really proud of. It really boosted not only what Berserk was doing, but my confidence in believing in what I do. We all sometimes have that imposter syndrome when, especially when you work self-employed. Yeah, you do your professional development in different things throughout the year, but it can still be a lonely struggle at times. And that really helped grow the company and my own skills and my own growth massively through winning that award. So yeah, it has grown over the years in size and in reach, but also the stories they get to tell. What's stayed the same though, and what's made me so happy about being involved for all those years, because it's always been about real people. People doing incredible things for our community, often without expectation of recognition. There have been so many memorable winners over the years, and but one that sort of stands out for me was last year's Chris Tarrant Award winner, which was the Stevens family. And that's really stayed with me. What they've been through is unimaginable. And yet they're taking their grief and they've turned it into something so powerful with Ollie's work, which is just sort of getting going again now, creating positive change, supporting young people, and making sure Ollie's name continues to inspire kindness and action. That's exactly, to me, what the awards are about. Recognising those people that do those little things and do those things that make a difference in our community. And I think they've managed to maintain the prestige of the awards because they've always been honest. They're about the heart, authenticity, community, and that's what people connect with. It's Reading people telling Reading stories, and that's what will always matter, and that's why I love the town so much.
And Matt, what is it that you're focusing on right now, and how can people find you online?
Obviously, there was a big change after stepping down from the board of the Pride of Reading, because as you can imagine, it's a massive role. So to direct at the start of the year, like I did for Berserk and the National Theatre Project, I absolutely loved that, and I'm really proud again to be directing a new piece, which I feel is quite relevant at the moment, and I'm loving doing it. So I'm excited to be focused on directing a play called The Man by James Graham. Now, James Graham is the writer, the author that did Dear England, which is currently back on at the National, just about to go on tour. Anyway, amazing writer. Okay, and we're taking that to South Street in July. It's a brilliant, it's funny, it's thought-provoking. It's a one-man play that explores the moments, the objects, the memories that shape a life. It's told through a series of boxes filled with receipts when he's doing his tax return. Yes, really, that's true.
Wow.
Don't want it to sound too boring. And each receipt sparks a story from the character's life. Okay, but on each night, we're already doing it for 2 nights at South Street, but each night will be a different night because it depends which audience gives him what receipt, so you don't know what show you're going to see, which I think is hugely exciting. But what makes it really special for me is that I'm directing it to support a sort of an ex-student of mine, which feels like a lovely sort of full circle moment again. I love those full circle moments. Like I'm even talking to you now, it's like a full circle moment. So I'm looking forward to sharing it with audiences. It's honest, it's relatable, and has a signature James Graham humour at the heart. But what really draws me to this piece is the quietly powerful it is about masculinity, and especially in today's world where it can feel so hard to know what being a man should look like. It's sensitive, honest, and it asks some, I feel, really important questions about identity, connection, and what we leave behind. Please come and see it. People can find me through my website, dramaguru.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, and the only social media I'm on is Blue Sky. I like the ethics of why Blue Sky was started, and the person that set it up, and their thoughts behind it. So and I'm always up for connecting with people who believe in the power of the performance. So, get in touch. But you'll find it on social media. You'll find it on South Street Arts. Have a look. The play's brilliant. And this young person's going to do his master's degree. He was, he had a bit of a tough time last year, had a bit of a confidence crisis. And we wanted to do this to he was a brilliant child performer as well, a very successful child performer. So I'm really excited to look at this work and make him see and remember his worth, because he is such a fine young actor. And we've got some other local people involved. I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but it will be a night of theatre to remember. And you mentioned earlier, theatre is difficult to sell at the moment. It's hard to get an audience in. Its costs of doing it are huge, So this is, we're only doing this to break even. This isn't about making money. This is to just cover our costs and put on what we feel is a story, especially now that needs to be told. Even though the play's 10 years old, 15 years old. I think it's set in 2010. It is set in 2010. So that's been fun. Going back to when the iPhone just came out, and going back to when people were first starting to do what you're doing now, these video talks, these video, education online, so there's so many exciting parts to it. As you can tell, I'm over the mood.
I will have to get a couple of tickets for certain. And my final question to you, Matt, is, if you were Prime Minister, which law would you introduce or change, and why?
Do you know how long I pondered over this? Because I know you sort of gave me I'm allowed to say you gave me the questions to see, or is that a secret? Anyway, you can edit that bit out if you need to. I pondered over this for so long, because, wow, it's a hard one. But if, to sum it all up, if I was Prime Minister, I think this is far more your game than it is mine. But as a layman, as what I would say, most people really, what I think they need right now is a bit of common sense, a little bit of compassion, and actual action, and not just the talk. I think people are tired. They're working hard. They're juggling a lot, and they just want to feel like someone's got their back. And even now, with Keir coming in and a lot of Labour supporters thinking, that was the case, it's just gone back to the same old rhetoric as it was before. And unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people believe in any party anymore. I think politics has been cheapened the same way that education, health, law and order, all those, I feel, over the last 20, 30 years have been cheapened in some way, so that nobody knows what to believe in anything anymore. So it really comes down to, if I had to change a law, I would probably change it to actions speak louder than words. And I know a lot is still going on. I know we're fed a lot of the negativity of what's going on. And, being in, my local pub, you get to hear so many different opinions from people from across all different age ranges. And, I used to be quite vocal with my beliefs, my thoughts, because I believe you should have a belief in something. I think it's important to have a belief in something, whether that be whatever, the universe, religion, politics, or your party, and to believe in them and know that they've got your back. So sorry if that's gone all a little bit, or deep or high, as I like to call it, but that's probably my answer for that one. How's that? Was that okay?
I love that. I would always say we need to encourage encourage as many people to get involved in politics and to stand for election as possible. And even if it's not right for you, you will know opinionated sons and daughters and friends, and just plant the seed in their mind. You'd be a great local councillor for getting that sorted. You'd be a great local MP. Why don't you look into that? Just plant the seed, because we're not taught at school or in general culture. Politics is for you. Politics is for everyone. And I just think putting that out there is always a positive thing. Now, Matt, you said you might have a question for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you might have already answered it because you sort of already had, but I just wanted to know what your favourite memory from those years that you spent at Berserk. I mean, I even found something the other day. You won't be able to see this on screen, but I had to pull this out. Where is it? This was. Where are you? Hold on, let me
Oh,
see
I'm
if I
worried
can
now.
find it. No, nothing to be worried about. Look, can you see that?
Oh my gosh, that is a real back in the day photo. Oh wow,
No,
I
I know
remember
this.
getting those done.
I know this is a podcast, but I don't know if you'll see that or if this goes out with us speaking to each
It'll
other.
be on YouTube.
I don't know how the format goes out, but you know that really made me smile. So that was for an agency at Shepperton Studio called Screenlight Agency that I used to belong to. I'm unfortunately not going anymore, but they were very helpful to me again in my early years. And so I wanted to know what your favourite memory of doing the classes at Woodley Youth Theatre or Berserk Woodley Youth Theatre was.
To me, it was just a totally different part of my life. It was a life where you could just be free to do whatever you want, to explore different topics, to you're not going to be told off. You could be spontaneous, you could be high status, you could be low status, you could command the room, you could tell people off, you could make people laugh, and just being given that permission to be anyone you want when you're a child and you've got your whole life ahead of you and you don't know who you want to be, really. You don't know the life you want to have. And to know that reality is negotiable. That's a term used a lot in the business world and the self-improvement world. But in drama and through those classes, I really felt that anything was possible. When you're young, you think your life is school and living with your parents, and that's it. And then you get older and you realize life is so much more of what you make it. And so for me, those drama classes really opened my eyes to I can do anything, I can be anyone, and life is exciting. And what could be better than that? And if you give that to so many young people, I know that they will feel so much more confident, positive, and excited about the world. And that is the gift that you give people, Matt. And I hope you realize that, because it is so important.
Oh, bless you. I'd loved hearing that. Thank you. And you just made me think, you know, because when I started creating my workshops back then, I've just sort of revisited. I recently had a trip to Peru, and it was like a moment where I remembered who I was, what I was doing, not to find myself, to, you know, to remember who I was. And I remember that the classes were always built around, obviously, performance, but also about self-development, about self-esteem, believing in yourself. So you mentioning that just takes, again, sorry to say again, takes it full circle to remind me of why I love doing it, to try and, you know, give those young people, to empower those young people has always been very important to me. So that's lovely. I'm glad you had it. And what about show? Which show did you enjoy? What show was you in?
I think I remember most vividly The Scars Were Red, which
Oh,
was the
yeah.
production about the Hillsborough disaster.
Yeah.
And of course, that was very serious subject matter. And for a production that was cast with children and that was performed at the Oakwood Theatre in Woodley, I just thought that was quite a good opening for a lot of us who had heard by that time about the Hillsborough disaster, but didn't really understand a lot, that by exploring things through art, you can introduce children to things where if they watch it in a documentary, it just wouldn't be quite appropriate. And I'm a big fan of, I think a lot of the time um, through trying to get people to be more empathetic or understand, it's a lot to do with the arts that can do that. We saw it was an ITV drama that got people to really deal with the post office scandal. I
Mm.
mean, this was known about for years. This was written
Yeah.
about in the Times, but it was drama that got people focusing on it. So I'm a big supporter of the arts because I think it's so much more important than just a nice to have or a day out. It really changes life, it changes people's minds, and it gets things done. So that's why I treat it very seriously. And yes, I remember that play very vividly.
Brilliant, and hopefully Liverpool are going to win the league this season as well, so which will be a wonderful ending to this little story. I can't thank you enough. It's been really lovely that you've asked me to talk to you, to talk about my work, to talk about everything life-wise. So thank you so much for having me on.
It's been great to catch up with you, Matt. Thank you so much for joining me on the Berkshire Heroes podcast.
See you again soon. Take care.